Kidversations, small voices, big stories.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Kidversations. I'm Brantley.
And I'm Charleston. We have a special guest today. His name is Jace, and he's the director of Surrender House Ministries. Welcome, Jace. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, man. I greatly appreciate it. It's great to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, man. Me and my wife are the owners and directors of Surrender House Ministries. We operate within transitional living for alcoholics and addicts, homeless men. Eventually, we'll move into women. Right now, it's only men, and we operate with men coming out of institutions, jails, prisons, things of that nature. Guys that are coming out of treatment or rehab. So basically, anyone who needs a second chance at life, that has had a hard time, life's been bad for them, they're in a position maybe where they're homeless and they don't have any help. We offer them a safe and a healthy environment to live in, with structure that would hopefully help them figure out who they are and hopefully help them find themselves and grow into the man that they're supposed to become.
That's awesome.
Hope that makes sense for you.
What made you start this?
Probably about 25 years ago, I started using drugs and drinking alcohol. I hadn't really been involved in any type of lifestyle like that at all. I came from a very good upbringing, had a very good family, went to college on athletic scholarship, stayed out of a lot of trouble up until I started using drugs and drinking alcohol. After about 20 years of being active in addiction and alcoholism, I found myself with suicidal thoughts and homicidal thoughts. I was absolutely insane. I had hit a rock bottom that put me in a position that life was going to have to change somehow, some way, or I was probably going to end up dead or in prison or in jail, probably for the rest of my life. So not learning lessons early in my life led me to having to wait until I was about 40 years old before I started getting my feet back underneath me.
What helped you get your feet back together? Was there a company, or did you do it to yourself? And did that inspire you to help other people?
Well, I got to a position in my life where I was seeing things and hearing things that other people weren't seeing and hearing. And they call that a psychosis. For me, it was a drug-induced psychosis where I was abusing drugs and medication on a high level to where it created my receptors in my brain not firing off properly. And so when my receptors in my brain were not firing off properly, I started seeing things that didn't exist. And I started hearing things that they weren't there. And so I eventually called my federal probation officer and asked my federal probation officer, like, is there a reason why people are following me? And he asked me, he was like, Jason, like, are you under the influence? Are you using drugs again? And I was honest to him and I told him, yeah. And so at that point, he had told me that I needed to go into treatment. And so treatment is a place where people who are on drugs and alcohol, who have mental health issues, they go into a treatment and they give them an assessment, alcohol assessment, drug assessment. They give them a mental evaluation and they try to assess the proper medication that they can be on to try to help their brain to start operating properly again. During this time, we go through detoxes where these chemicals in our body are starting to flush out of our body. It's very difficult on the body. It makes it very hard. We want to sleep. We want to cry. We'll have upset stomachs. We'll be vomiting. Our skin starts to crawl. We'll get to the point where we can't sleep at all. And so we go into treatment that way. We are in a safe environment to where they can help us get through this withdrawal in this detoxing process, because that is the most dangerous part about the alcoholic or about the addict, is when they're trying to come off these substances and they're trying to quit drinking, the body wants to shut down. And when the body wants to shut down, for some of them, it can kill them. And so the treatment provides a safe place for us to try to get our senses back. They give us medication that will help our brains to balance back out and level back out. So in hopes that maybe we'll start thinking clearly again. And it doesn't happen very quickly. It's a process that can take many weeks, many months, depending on how long you have been involved with what you're doing. It could take a year or two for those things to come out. But the treatment provides a situation anywhere from, depending on how bad it is for you, it may just be a couple of days that you're in there. It may be a week that you're in there. It may be a week and a half to 2 weeks that you're in there. And so I go into a treatment and they assess me. And they give me medication, and this medication starts leveling me out a little bit. That way I can actually have a normal conversation. And even at that point, it really wasn't all that normal. But I was trying to relearn all these things all over again. And so the treatment is where all of it started for me. It was like ground zero. Okay, here I am. I have a problem. I need help. And I'm going to try to allow these people to help me. And so I go into the treatment and I allow my care to be placed in their hands that way, because I can't do it on my own, obviously. That's how I ended up there.
So when you're a kid, your parents and your teachers and your guardians always talk about how drugs and overdoses on alcohol are bad for you. What made you start doing the drugs if you knew it was bad for you?
I believe a lot of my issues growing up, because I moved a lot. Like I didn't get to grow up in a hometown, and I didn't create friends in a hometown and those friends be my friends forever. Like that never existed for me. I think by the time I was in high school, I had been in about 5 different schools at that point.
Dang.
So it's a lot. I think I was 10 years old, which I think is Brantley's age at that point, that I moved from one state to another state. And so when I moved, like, it would have been different if I'd have just moved right down the road. You know what I mean? Because I would have had the same people around me. But moving to a completely different state, like, I don't know anything. I don't know any roads. I don't know any trees. I don't know any landmarks, anything period whatsoever. And so a lot of my issues growing up was trying to find acceptance in the world. I don't really know who I am. I have moved so much and I have seen so much different culture that I really don't know what I like, and I don't know what I don't like, and I don't know how to settle into my own skin and be okay with my own self. My father was a pastor. My mother was a school teacher. She graduated from ETSU with her master's with honors. So I came from a very educated and healthy, upbringing. I didn't come from a broken home. I didn't come from moms and dads who had alcohol and drugs problems and abuse problems and child neglect and things like that. I didn't come from anything like that. But I was very, very sheltered. And so when I finally ended up in college, after being in about 6 or 7 schools, trying to figure all this stuff out, I found myself in a position where, like, I wasn't being monitored. Okay. And my mom and dad have kind of like always told me what I had to do, where I can and can't go, who I can hang out with and who I can't hang out with. So they micromanaged my life on a very high level. They never allowed me really to make bad decisions. And so, like, I think me and my wife were just talking about this not long ago. And, like, I think I ended up in a position where, like, maybe I kind of wanted to know what a bad decision was like, and if the consequences of it were really what they said. Because I really don't know, because I've never had the opportunity to really test the waters in that area. I found myself alone. I found myself without guidance, and I found myself without anyone overseeing me. And I really was trying to fit in college with people, once again, that I'm not like them. I don't feel like I'm like them at all. And so I end up doing some of the things that they were doing. It did not take long for me to find out that, like, I enjoyed it. I don't really know why I enjoyed it. Maybe it was the sense of doing something maybe that I know I wasn't supposed to do, and at the moment I was getting away with it. You know what I mean? And so that part might have had a lot to do with the whole beginning part of it. I remember having a bad day one time, and I remember being around somebody that was that was smoking, and he was just kind of like, "Hey man, just try it. It'll make you feel better." And like it was scary, because I was told, that drugs are bad, alcohol is bad, like it's gonna ruin your life. Those kind of people seem to struggle more in life. The stereotype of what they give off for alcoholics and addicts and things of that nature. I felt weak, I guess, is an easy way to explain it, and I tried it, and like I ended up having to pay the consequences for some really poor decisions.
When you said you moved a lot, was there a reason you moved?
There's a reason. My father's a pastor, and I don't know if you know anything about ministry work and pastoring, but they can tend to move a lot. Being obedient to God's calling and listen to what God's saying, and knowing that you're hearing God's voice and not your own voice or the enemy's voice or anything like that. Hearing those things, we're taught that when God speaks and tells us to move, like, we don't hesitate. We move, we make the move. And so we started moving from South Carolina to Tennessee. We came into Johnson City as my dad, a family life minister, and then my dad ended up moving, I think, or we ended up moving about 4 years later into Greene County. We moved into Mohawk, and my dad took his first pastorate position at Fairview Baptist Church in Mohawk. My mother took a school teacher position at McDonald Elementary School, and then from there I ended up going to college. From college, my mom and dad, while I was in college, ended up moving to Hawkins County, into Rogersville, and so my dad took his second pastorate position at that point. So even while I was in college, my mom and dad still moving. So like I go to college, I'm living in Greene County. I have all my friends that I'm starting to establish a life with. I go to college, and as soon as I go to college, I'm telling mom and dad, I remember this very vividly. I was like, I don't want to move again. Like, I'm tired of having to try and reestablish friends. Like, it was just so much, and it was just so ongoing, like on and on and on. It never stopped. Every 4 years, every 5 years, whatever it is like we're up and leaving again. Being a preacher's kid and being involved in a family that operates within the ministry and tries to follow God is always moving, and God is always trying to move his people, and he's trying to place people in proper positions where they're best going to serve the Lord. And that was kind of the result of my childhood. And so, like, ironically today, like, we get to operate within the ministry today. After all this stuff that's took place, it's like the calling that my mother told me that I had on my life at age 16 finally came true, probably about 30 years later. You know what I mean? And it's really cool to sit here and be able to wrap my head around all of it later on. But that was the reason why we ended up moving so much. I didn't get an option. Like, being a kid, like, how are you supposed to understand, like, why do we have to move again? Like, I don't want to move, you know what I mean? And it was just on and on and on and on, and moving and moving and moving. I think I went to, when we came to Johnson City when I was 10, I ended up in Cherokee Elementary School. I think from Cherokee, I went to Liberty Bell. When I hit 7th grade in Liberty Bell, I called in-school suspension. And as soon as I called in-school suspension, my mom and dad pulled me out of Liberty Bell, and they homeschooled me. So I was homeschooled for about a year. And then they sent me back to school into a private school again, which was Tri-City Christian School. Dude, I'm not even in the 8th grade yet. You know what I mean? And so I ended up going to school there in the 8th grade, and in the 8th grade, my dad, we moved to Mohawk, and so now here we are making a move again. And so when I'm going into high school, it's like you can go to whatever high school you want to. I ended up going to West Greene, and once again, I'm in a different school again. I'm like in 3 schools, I think, in a matter of like 4 or 5 years. I'm in like 3 different schools. And so it's a lot, man. Welcome to being a preacher's kid and having a life like that.
What is something that your mom and dad could have done that probably would have prevented you from doing drugs?
Probably nothing. I mean, I know that's a very short, quick answer, but like my mom and dad did a great job.
What about
trying to trying to lead and guide me in the right direction. I didn't come from a bad background. I came from a loving family, caring family, supportive family. My mom and dad, neither one of them had parents. So my mom and dad did not have the same teaching experiences as a child is what they were trying to give me. So like they did the best that they could with what they knew as far as like what parenting looked like. They don't really know what it is that they're doing. And it's not that they're doing a bad job. We just get to a place at some point in our life where we just like to try and do something different. I don't think there's anything that they could have done. I think it was, I was telling you guys earlier, like I made poor decisions. It's not that I was a bad kid. It's not that I was, had a bad upbringing. I just eventually at some point in my life, I just made poor decisions. And I didn't make little poor decisions. I made big poor decisions. And my big poor decisions hindered me on a large scale for a very long time. It was very difficult. It was very difficult to learn how to handle making bad decisions. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so like it's one thing to make a bad decision, but like if I'm not having the opportunity as a child to make a bad decision, then I'm not going to be able to learn how to bounce back from that bad decision. And so my mom and dad didn't allow me to make a lot of bad decisions. They made a lot of my decisions for me. Learning how to deal with bad decisions or poor decisions, just being poor decisions and not the end of the world, possibly could have been something they could have done a little bit differently. But I honestly don't think that my mom and dad had enough teaching, enough tools, enough research about any of it to be able to help in any manner that they did. I was just got to a point where I made a bad decision and I just took off with it, man. I got kicked out of college 2 years after being in college. And I carried the shame and the guilt of all of that. And I used that as justifiable reason to continue to do the things that I did, which is another poor decision. And so like I didn't do well with the first poor decision or the ones before that. And it was like my poor decisions, because of not having experiences in those life, continued to be more poor decisions on top of it.
Why'd you get kicked out of college?
I allegedly did everything that they could not prove that I did.
Did you do it?
If they think I did it, I did it. And that's all that matters. Whether I did it or not, that part doesn't matter. If they think I did it, then I did it.
So no?
I didn't say that.
So yes.
I didn't say that either.
So maybe? Maybe?
You said you went to college on an athletic scholarship.
Yes.
What sport did you play?
I played baseball going into college. The way that it worked out was the basketball coach called me up to come and practice at the school at Southern Wesleyan University. While I was practicing with the basketball team, the baseball coach come in and watched me practice with the basketball team. Mm-hmm. The very next week, the baseball coach sent out a letter asking me if I would be interested in a scholarship into playing baseball. And that was kind of how that part happened. It was really weird at the beginning. I didn't want to play baseball. The love of my life was basketball. I went to Great American Baseball Showcase, I think when I was a junior going into my senior year, which is an invitational camp. Like you don't just get to show up, like it's an invitation to be able to come and be a part of it. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure that the baseball coach was actually at that camp. It's like a scouting camp for college coaches. And I'm pretty sure he got to watch me perform there. And so when the opportunity came for me to actually come and run with the basketball team and stuff like that also, I think he just jumped on board and went to see what that looked like and ended up making a decision. So I went in to play baseball. I ended up playing shortstop. It's a Division II school. It was cool. It's really cool. Thank you for asking that.
Do you ever wish that you became a professional baseball player? Or basketball player?
there you go. Yeah. I had a dream early in life to play basketball on the highest level that I could. I don't think I really would have been picky. Me and my wife were talking about this the other day. Like I probably would have killed myself chasing after that basketball. It was just that much love for the game. I was a natural in baseball. I didn't have to put forth a lot of effort to play. And don't get me wrong, I still practice hitting the ball and pitching and throwing and running, but like I still did all of those things. But it wasn't the same kind of work that I put in to play basketball. I put a lot of hours in learning how to handle the ball, learning how to shuffle my feet, see the floor, all these things. I had a dream to play basketball early in my life. Because of that dream, it kept me away from the party scene. It kept me away from a lot of people. If you wanted to know where I was at, we didn't have cell phones back then, believe it or not, or computers. All we had was a landline. Y'all know what a landline is? Okay. So we had a landline back then. And the only way that you could get in touch with people is like you really just showed up at their houses. And if they were there, great. And a lot of times you'd show up at people's houses and there'd be 15 or 20 of us playing football or playing basketball or swimming, jumping on track, whatever it is that we're doing. Because I was so focused on trying to make it to the next level on sports, like I didn't want anything to do with people that were drinking or partying or anything like that. So it kept me in a healthy area of my life at that point. I never had a dream to play baseball. Baseball was just an avenue that took me to the next level, is all it was. I wasn't really super happy about it. Possibly if I could have ended up with the basketball scholarship, there's a good possibility I probably would have never drank and I probably would have never smoked. Probably would have never done any drugs or anything like that. But because it was in baseball, there was a part of me that really wasn't fully sold out to it. Does that make sense? I was completely sold out to the basketball part of it. Like I would not have done anything to hurt my body or jeopardize my body in any way, form, or fashion. But because it was baseball, the investment of my life was not in that. And so I was a little open to allowing myself to be depressed. I was a little open to making a poor decision because it really wasn't my choice to begin with.
Did your bad decisions lead you to prison? And if it did, how long were you in there?
Yes, I found myself incarcerated many a times.
Incarcerated?
Incarceration is being in jail.
Okay.
I'm locked up. Hospitals, institutions, which is like an H&I is what they call it. And so like if I'm in an institution, a prison, a hospital, like, we were talking about treatment earlier, that's considered a hospital. But it's almost like an institution as well, because once you go in there, depending on how bad your mental state is, they won't let you leave. So like you're kind of locked up in that situation, right? And so I've had that kind of prison, and I've also been behind bars and closed doors in jails. I was actually in Brushy Mountain when Brushy Mountain closed down. I've been in Charles Bass and Morgan County, which are other prison facilities. The bad decisions, man, when I started making the bad decisions, 2 years later, I was kicked out of college. And we were talking about that a little bit earlier. It happened so fast from the time that I started using drugs and alcohol. From the time that I got kicked out of college, it was within like a year and a half later, I got caught for like 6 pounds of weed and over 200 Xanaxes and a firearm. Back in the early 2000s, that was a lot. So it's a little different today, but back then, like that was a whole lot. Prisons and jails and stuff became a part of my normal life after that. It happened so fast that it was like I have no idea what happened. And then the next thing I know, I was in it so deep that like 10 years later goes by and I'm sitting here like, where did these 10 years go? Yeah. And I'm still finding myself going in and out of jails and in and out of prisons, doing the same things, all because of my curiosity, to begin with, all from the, trying to figure out who I am, not being okay with myself, making one poor decision and kept on making poor decisions after that. It doesn't take much to end up in jail. Like you can just be in the wrong place at the wrong time, hang out with the wrong people. My mom and dad taught me, I can't really say taught me, but they told me at an early age, you are who you hang out with. And I really didn't understand that stuff. I thought that they just really didn't know what they were talking about. But in all honesty, like they knew way more than I ever could have thought about knowing at that time. Because of the people that I chose to hang out with when I was trying to figure out who I was, I started becoming like those people. Yeah. And it changed who I was originally created to be. And I started acting in these manners, drinking and smoking and staying out all night long, not coming home. And it's crazy because like it can happen so fast, but like, man, it takes a long time to get away from it. Like it's took a long time for me to be able to get to where I'm at today and start to be okay with myself today. I've got like 20 years of built up bad decisions and consequences. And it's hard to forgive myself for that. You know what I mean? I've wasted half of my life due to some poor decisions early in my life. You know, I went from having a silver spoon in my mouth, and I'm very close to becoming a coach, and doing what I enjoy to do for the rest of my life and working a job I want the rest of my life to being in jail and not ever having the opportunity for that stuff again. So it happens really, really, really quick. And to get away from it takes a very, very long time to get away from it. It's very difficult.
When you were at rock bottom, what made you like pick yourself back up, get back together, and start a company helping people that were just like you?
To be honest with you, I really didn't think it was anything that existed. I didn't think it was possible. I didn't believe that I was ever going to have my sanity back. I was insane at this point. I couldn't think for myself or think straight. Early in my childhood, you know, I told you that my dad was a pastor, right? And I had a very good upbringing. Very early in my life, my mom and dad had taught me a lot of things about God. And so when I found myself at this bottom, at this most difficult place in my life, like I had nothing else to reach out to. I had nothing else to rely upon. I had tried living the last 20 years playing God in my own life. I tried living the last 20 years being in control and like not just controlling my own life, but like trying to control everybody's life around me also. And all of that stuff didn't work out very well. I harmed myself, I hurt myself, I harmed my family, hurt my family, I helped destroy my family to where none of us talked, and it wasn't just all on me, but like I was absolutely, you know, one of them that was helping that situation. I got to the point where the sanity was so bad that like I was ready to be saved, rescued, somebody, you know, help me. I can't do it, so I needed help. And so I had the faith of a mustard seed that the God that my mom and dad had taught me about existed. I had not seen this God's presence in some years. I believe that he was true. I believe that he existed. I have seen him show himself in my mom's life and in my family's life for the past, 30 some years at that point, glimpses of it here and there. And so I went back to the basics of what my family tried teaching me, at the beginning of my life. And I leaned into the things that I thought were true about the creator that I thought was real, that existed. And so I started praying a lot, like almost all day, every day, because my insanity and my brain was in such bad shape. Like my biggest prayer daily was like, dear Lord, like just help me not be like this forever. Like, I don't want to be like this forever. Like, am I going to be seeing things and hearing things for the rest of my life? Am I going to be in a straitjacket in a padded room? Am I going to be sitting here and having these thoughts and hearing these voices and stuff? And like, I need help. Please don't let me be like this. So at the beginning, I had prayers of desperation. Okay. And there's different types of prayers. And I'm learning this as I'm going through my journey today. There's different types of prayers. But early in my journey, and when I say early in my journey, 5 years ago, when I'm having all these issues, loss of sanity, my biggest prayers were prayers of desperation. I'm crying out to God. I'm desperate. I need you. I need you to show up in my life. I need you to take my hand, help restore my sanity, heal my heart, soften my soul. God started showing up and started doing these things while I was in treatment, while I was in rehab. And so like I can't go nowhere. And so like I'm really wigging out, all these people around me, and I think they're all out to get me. And so like every time I started hearing these voices or seeing these things, I would get away from everybody. Even if I had to go to the bathroom, I'd go to the bathroom and I'd just go pray in the bathroom. And all day, every day, every time I had one of these issues, one of these psychosis moments, I would go and pray, and then I would calm down, almost like if God was allowing me to just get through that moment. And one of the biggest things for me with the prayer was I was trying not to run no more, because I had been running from everything. I've been running from myself. I've been running from the court system. I've been running from the police. I've been running and running and running and running, and like I really don't even know what I'm running from. I'm just scared to death. And so a little bit by a little bit, God started showing up. The proof of prayer and going to God in prayer, and him allowing peace upon my life in that moment was something that continuously kept me going back to him. It was almost like all these drugs that I had done had made me crazy, right? And so like now I'm trying to find peace and sanity, and so I go and I pray to God, and I get a little peace and I get a little sanity. And so I would go back out in there with everybody, and then all of it would happen again. I'd break off. I'd go pray again. I'd get a little more peace and sanity. And so God started showing up for me early in my life, but like I believe he existed. I believe he was real. I believed he was true. I didn't have to force myself with a God conception. I didn't have a God problem. I believe that God existed and he was there. I had just drifted away from him during my addiction and everything. That was the main thing. Like it wasn't no great big split in the sky and a light shining on me with music playing. It wasn't nothing like that for me. It was just little tiny moments alone with God where I sensed a little bit of peace and I sensed a little bit of sanity. I felt protected. I felt comforted, and then I would go back into the insane and the chaos and the confusion of the world, and then I would go back to God again, and it just build and build and build. So it started building my trust, it started building my faith, and I started believing once again that all of the things that my mom and my dad had taught me earlier in my life, like all of these things were real and they were true. There was nothing fake or phony or false about the experiences that my family has had with God. And so like at this particular moment in time, like it started making a little bit more sense for me. Like the healer that they call him, I started feeling healing. The miracle maker that they talk about when it comes to God, I started seeing like little miracles around me. Yeah. And it was something that was very comforting. And so like I had little tiny spiritual experiences early in my journey, and because of those little tiny spiritual experiences, it started building my faith more and more and more. Once my faith started becoming stronger and stronger, my trust started becoming stronger and stronger, and I was able to let go of myself more and try to latch on to him more. And when I let go of myself and get out of the way and I reach out to God, life becomes more free. I'm not carrying the weight of the world anymore, and I'm not carrying the weight of all my poor decisions and all the trouble I've been in. Like I get to walk in a new free human being and path today.
When did you decide that you were ready to help other people?
I believe that God has blessed me with the gift of loving people. I think it was something that was born into me. I care about people, man. I've always cared about people. I probably have not done a great job displaying that, at times, but like in all honesty, like I've always cared about people, and I've cared about people on a very high level to where like I'm willing to neglect my own self for other people sometimes. Even during the times that I was active in my addiction and I was running the streets and staying out all night, even during those times, I still had a heart for other people. I wasn't out trying to rob people. I wasn't out trying to steal from people. That was never anything that like I ever wanted to do. And so like I believe that God has just given me that gift. And it's hard sometimes because sometimes I don't want to care about people. I'm just being honest. Like people make it hard to want to care about them sometimes. When I started getting into recovery life and I started to learn what recovery was like for me, you can't say for everyone, but for me, what it was like for me, we started practicing spiritual principles. And practicing these spiritual principles, I really enjoyed practicing the spiritual principles, trying to show love without conditions, kindness, compassion, tolerance and patience, mercy and grace and forgiveness upon people. And those are difficult things to practice when it comes to people. But when I sit here and I think about love, and I think about love as the overall, and if we do love properly, then we touch all of the other principles if we perform love properly. When I started seeing the impact of what loving on people did to their lives, and then in return how it made me feel, I started to realize that I wanted to do more than just what I was doing. And I had no idea what it looked like. I remember talking to my mom. I remember talking to my wife, my pastor, who she wasn't my wife at the time, but like we had multiple conversations with my sister, the men at church, and I would go in there and I'd be active in the recovery community. I would be going to meetings. I would be doing service work. I have sponsees. I'd interact with my sponsor. And like I always felt like there was something missing, like if I was supposed to be doing more. And so like I'm seeking out to my pastor and spiritual leaders and spiritual guides, because like I felt like what was to come more for me was more on a spiritual manner than it was a worldly manner. I wasn't trying to appease the world. I wasn't trying to be accepted or find my place in the world anymore. And like that's one of the greatest gifts that God's given me, back to me, is like I'm not sitting here trying to fit in with what the world has to offer me. I'm not really interested in all that stuff. I don't really know if I can put a finger on when. You know what I mean? I just know at some point I found myself in a position where like I wanted to see people's lives change. And I wanted to be able to offer them whatever I could offer them as far as my time, my experiences, whatever it is that I had to offer them, I was willing to offer it to them, and I was willing to give them that time and try to do those things. September, I think, of 24, I'd called my pastor up. And me and my wife had been, and I don't think she was my wife at this point. I think we were just engaged. And called him up and I asked him, I was like, how did you know when God was calling you into the ministry that voice you were hearing and that pull that you were hearing was coming from God? How did you know that it was from him? And how did you know like it wasn't just something that you thought was cool and you liked it, and because you liked it and thought it was cool, like maybe that didn't come from God, it's just maybe you wanted it to come from God? And so like it was a very confusing time for me of like, am I hearing what God is saying, or am I telling myself that this is of God because I like it, because it sounds good? And so he explained it to me like some of these things have to be lined up for me. Like you this needs to be happening and this needs to be happening. When these things are taking place, like the preparation is there, and like all these things are in order to make that move. And so when we were having this conversation in September, my wife had went to work. She wasn't at work at the time, but she had went to work that morning. I had been up with her, and I was like I'm getting off the phone. I know exactly what we're supposed to be doing. And I got off the phone with him. I called Faith at that time, and I was like, I know what we're supposed to be doing. I was like, we're going to be opening up a transitional living house for Alcoholics Anonymous. And so what had led me into this point was I had been in sober living houses. I had been in Oxford houses. I'd been in a couple of different of the Oxford houses. Those are sober living programs as well. And I had created these experiences in the 3 years that I had been in these houses, where I saw some things that I struggled with. How people didn't take things very seriously, how people took advantage of the opportunities that they've gotten. And so like with my experience of heartache in these areas, because like it bothers me, man, when like people have an opportunity to change their life and they don't take it, you know what I mean? And they just kind of take advantage of it, really. And so like those things really bothered me. And so I started realizing probably then in those houses that like I want to be of more service to people. So in September of 2024, we believe that we got the calling from God to open up housing to try to navigate within ministry work. And we didn't know that it was going to be ministry work at that point. We didn't even have a clue of the name of it or what it was going to look like or anything like that. We just knew that we were going to be moving in some type of ministry work. And we knew it was going to be, in the recovered community. We knew that part was taking place. Somewhere a little bit later, we were trying to figure out what are we going to call it. And I remember my wife she said that she was on her way to work, and the word surrender, just kept popping up in her head. So we practiced trying to surrender to God and being obedient to God, and like these things we're practicing in our life, and we practice having a conscious contact with God, praying, to God and speaking with Him on a daily basis. And she kept having the word surrender pop up in her brain. Like, I'm surrendering, I don't know what this surrendering means. And then she was like, all of a sudden it was like, oh, surrender house. And so that was how we ended up with the name of the ministry. And so at the beginning, we just called it Surrender House. It wasn't Surrender House Ministries. And so later on, we had discussed, like, do we call it Surrender House Ministries? Do we call it Surrender House? Because, like, we don't want to, the words that we used was we don't want to scare people off. Okay, because a lot of people, when you hear the word ministry, a lot of people that have God problems, they don't want to hear it. They think that we're trying to force people to believe in the same God that we believe in. That we're trying to force people to pray when we say pray. We're trying to force people to go to a certain church, and we're trying to just really micromanage and control their life. And so, like, we stayed away from the ministry part of Surrender House. We were just going into straight programming with the intentions of speaking the name of Jesus Christ into this house and into these men, not in a forceful way, but to try to produce something to those guys as God has produced to us. Love them in the same manner that God has loved us. It wasn't until later on one day at church, when I say later on, maybe 2-3 months later, we were in church one day and we were talking to some people about Surrender House, and I had a conversation with somebody, and the word Surrender House Ministries just flowed out of my mouth like it was supposed to be there and existed from the beginning. And I had to stop and I paused and I was like, what? I was like, Surrender House Ministries, like, where did that come from? You know what I mean? And so we ended up talking about the whole Surrender House Ministries ordeal. Like, do we call it ministry work? Do we not call it ministry work? And as we were going through our journey, staying in contact with God, God continued to, like, open up doors and continue to tell us things. And so we ended up with the word surrender. We ended up turning it into Surrender House. Later on, still talking to God and dealing with our relationship with God, it eventually turned into Surrender House Ministries. And then we ended up with the website and the everything that came along with Surrender House Ministries. We are not a faith-based program, even though it sounds and looks like a faith-based program. We have to be underneath some legal ordeals to be able to call it a faith-based program, a 501c3 and things like that, which we've not obtained at this moment. But at some point we will, be considered a faith-based program. And Surrender House Ministries, it is a website, surrenderhouseministries.com. We allow spiritual freedom within our program. We have never been forced to follow God. We've never been forced to believe in God. We've never been forced to choose to pray or to go to church or any of those things. And so with the ministry that we're operating with, we feel and believe like these guys need to choose God, not to be forced to choose God. And so, like, we try to display the best we can love in a manner as God has displayed to us. And we're in hopes by speaking the name of Jesus in front of these guys and they seeing our life and how it's changed, we're in hopes that maybe something will click with them to where they can actually start a relationship with a God of their own type of understanding. We're operating now, I think, at we've got about 10 months active with turnkeys now. We have 2 houses in Kingsport, 1 house in Johnson City. We just opened up the house in Johnson City. And that's kind of what it's looking like right now, man.
How can people reach out to you if they want to join a Surrender House? And how do you pick the people who go in it?
We have a website. A lot of it was weird how our name started traveling and moving to begin with. We had people calling us, man, from I think almost Hamlin County, Knoxville, Virginia, and West Virginia. And I don't even think we've had a website that was active for like maybe 2 months. And so like we had just opened up a house, so we haven't been operating very long. And somehow, some way, the word got out and it started spreading, and a lot of it I think was online. SerenaHouseMinistries.com is our website. Up on the website gives information about what it is that we do. At the bottom of the website, there are PDF files, and with the PDF files, you have one that's an application, you have one that is guidelines and expectations, and you'll have a PDF that is a phasing up form. And the phasing up form is for court system. The judge wants to see a certificate of completion of the program, wants to see the criterias of what they're doing to reach the next phase. And so all that stuff is available on the website. That would be the easiest way to find out information about Surrender House Ministries. On the website as well is our email. On the website also is my personal phone number. As far as stipulations on coming into the house, on the application, at the top of the application, and we put it here that way if you're wanting to fill out an application, you can see these stipulations before you go into the application, to some things that we are just not qualified to operate with. We're just not capable of doing it. And so those will be the things that will really be the only deal breaker on being able to come to the house. One of the things, most definitely, we want to try and see people who can pass a drug test if possible. And if they can't pass a drug test, we want to encourage them to go into a treatment and possibly into a rehab. That way they have the detox process. You remember the detox process we talked about with the assessments and medication? That way they have that part underneath their belt. That way when they come into the program, they're a little more stable.
Is there anything you would like to say to the audience?
If you think that your life is too bad, if you think that you've gone through way too much to where your life, it's impossible for it to change, if you've hurt too many people or your family or yourself, or you just don't think that you can quit drinking or using, Surrender House Ministry is here to try and help you. I'm living proof that there's hope. There is a God that does exist that can restore not just your life, but your family, and give you all the things back that you've ever lost. If you have these issues and you have these problems and you're seeking for help, please reach out to us at Surrender House Ministries. If we are not able to help you personally, we will help you navigate into a situation that can help get your life back on track and point you in the right direction. We're not here to try to fix, manage, or control anyone. We're here to try and help people. And if the help doesn't come from us, or if it doesn't work out well for us, we will help you try and find a situation that will be helpful for you.
Thank you, Jason, for joining us.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me. It's been cool.
And thank you for watching Kidversations. Don't forget that we have a new episode every Friday at 6 p.m.
Bye!